Demogorgon! We're in deep shit.
Mark Duffer places the kids in a Stephen King novel. The children are the ones most directly aware of the supernatural threat and dealing with defeating the monster. The show's logo resembles the typeface used for the paperback books of Stephen King. The Duffer brothers based the design of their Stranger Things lookbook on the style of a vintage Stephen King novel to help sell their show. In the police station, we see an officer reading a book with a picture of Stephen King on the back cover.
I love that book. It's a nasty mutt.
Although we don't see the title, we can assume that it's Cujo. Later, Terry Ives' sister asks,
"You read any Stephen King?"
when they see a mobile of clowns that recall the movie and King novel, It. Lucas tries to kill the monster with a slingshot, the same way the kids in It try to kill Pennywise.
A wrist rocket.
You're gonna take out the Demogorgon with a slingshot?
First of all, it's a wrist rocket.
Even though this doesn't actually work, the slingshot, going back to the biblical story of David defeating Goliath, is a symbol of the small and pure-hearted underdog defeating the powerful oppressor. Nancy's hand coming out of the tree looks like Carrie's bloody hands coming out of the grave in Brian De Palma's Carrie, based on the novel by King. Eleven also reminds us of Carrie, in that she's a mistreated outcast with dangerous telekinetic powers. When Steve and his friends slut-shame Nancy, this also reminds us of how Carrie is bullied for getting her period. During auditions, the Duffer brothers had the boys reenact scenes from Stand By Me, which is based on Stephen King's The Body. The series also makes homages to when the Stand By Me kids walk on train tracks and the bullies attack with a switchblade. Stranger Things includes an homage to one of The Shining's most iconic scenes, of Jack and the Axe, when Joyce axes one of her living room walls, only to discover that there's nothing on the other side. Likewise, The Shining's Overlook Hotel is full of impossible characteristics, like windows that shouldn't be there. For Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will in Stranger Things, the iconic role-playing game isn't just a hobby. It's how they see the world, and how they interpret everything that happens after Will gets taken by the monster, which the kids refer to as the
Demogorgon.
Even though it doesn't, strictly speaking, look like the traditional D&D Demigorgon. Dungeons & Dragons is a metaphorical system for developing the characters and themes of Stranger Things, as well as explaining the complicated upside-down world.
The Veil of Shadows is a dimension that is a dark reflection or echo of our world.
Elle places Will's character, the wizard Will the Wise, next to the Demigorgon to illustrate that he's in another dimension with the monster. The black underside of the board also resembles the parallel universe Elle enters through the sensory deprivation tank. When we open the D&D game, it's Will's turn, and he's in danger. The monster surprises Will, just as it does in the following scene. Will chooses a firebomb instead of protection, but he rolls a 7, too low to defeat the Demigorgon, so he's vulnerable to the monster.
The Demogorgon. It got me.
Later, Jonathan casts a fireball to injure the monster. The kids also correspond to D&D archetypes. Mike is the paladin, Dustin is the bard, Lucas the ranger, and Elle is the sorcerer. While Will is a sorcerer in game, in the show he also aligns with the rogue or thief, as he is able to stealthily hide from the Demigorgon. They also mention the lost knight, Hopper.
Something is coming. Something angry. Hungry for your blood. It is almost here.
The final D&D game of the season introduces a new monster, the Thessal Hydra. This could foreshadow the monster of Season 2. The Goonies is another classic 80s film full of kids acting like kids, riding bikes everywhere, and living lives totally unknown to their parents.
Mom!
You learned how to exercise like a normal kid?
But Mom!
Look at you, you're hyperventilating here. Where's your brother?
Stranger Things recalls this vision of childhood. And fan favorite Dustin is similar to the Goonies' Chunk, especially when Dustin looks for chocolate pudding in the school cafeteria.
Mike! I found the chocolate pudding!
Just like how Chunk looks for ice cream.
I told you so! See you guys? You never believed!
But he's also got the smart mouth of Mouth, who always says the funny thing.
Accident or not, admit it was a little awesome.
And tries to hit on older girls. Another fan favorite, Barb, looks just like Steph from the Goonies, and Jonathan's protective instinct for Will also comes from the older brother in the Goonies. Stranger Things also embodies the spirit of Explorers, another 80s movie that shows a bunch of kids, including a young Ethan Hawke, going on fun adventures while seeking out supernatural forces. Will and his friends are fans of comic book characters like Mr. Fantastic and Professor X. Will says he wants X-Men comic number 134. This comic introduces Dark Phoenix, who takes over Jean Grey, who, like Elle, is a telekinetic woman. In 134, Jean Grey uses her powers to slam the monster against the wall, like Elle does in the season finale. In X-Men, Jean Grey comes back, giving us a hint that Elle, in season 2, will also return. And of course the boys are obsessed with Star Wars, making references to Jedi powers to describe Eleven's abilities.
That's like R2-D2 going to fight Darth Vader.
Mike talks about Yoda's ability to move things with his mind. We see several Star Wars toys, including a Yoda figurine and a Millennium Falcon model that Eleven levitates. There are tons more references to 80s pop culture that recall the time period generally and are just good fun. Casting 2 adult leads who were young 80s stars is itself an 80s reference. When Lucas goes off by himself, he wraps a bandana around his forehead, like Rambo. The talk of drawing First Blood is also a Rambo reference.
I drew First Blood, so...
They drew First Blood, not me.
Winona Ryder wanted her hairstyle modeled after Meryl Streep's hair in Silkwood. Jonathan and Steve's brawl resembles the fight sequence in this 1989 action movie, in the way the boys go on punching for almost a humorously ridiculous length of time. The way Eleven quietly identifies Will in a photo is closely based on the scene from Witness, when a young boy, Samuel, identifies the murderer with a newspaper clipping. The scene when Lucas packs before investigating by himself resembles the scene in Commando, when Colonel John Matrix prepares his weapons before a fight. The Stranger Things poster was designed by artist Kyle Lambert, but it mimics the style of Drew Struzan, who designed posters for Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and over 100 other films. The very first scene echoes 1986's Aliens. The visuals of the lab technicians and cocoons take after the original 1979's Alien. The way the monster's face opens up in 4 directions also looks like the alien eggs opening. In Chapter 8, Hopper finds Will in the Upside Down with a reptilian tube attached to his mouth. It looks like the facehugger version of the xenomorph in Alien, which pushes a tube-like nose down the mouth to implant an alien embryo. This could be what is happening to Will. We later see him cough up bug-like critters, suggesting that he's been taken over by some monster implantation. Will's cough also recalls Kane's cough before the alien creature bursts out of his chest. The trooper who finds Will's body is named O'Bannon, an allusion to Dan O'Bannon, who wrote the movie Alien. The Demigorgon bears a resemblance to the child-eating Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth. Nancy enters the Upside Down through a tree, similar to how Ophelia enters the tree to find the Toad's Grotto. Both have portals that can access a different world through a wall, and use a tether as someone enters another dimension. Stranger Things' young girl moment, reminiscent of Close Encounters, also resembles the behind-the-child shot in Poltergeist. Again, this is a symbol of the child's awe in encountering dangerous supernatural forces of much greater power than the child can imagine. The Stranger Things monster's human-like torso and claws and its mouth all look like the monster in Predator. 11 scenes in the sensory deprivation tank take after scenes in Altered States, Minority Report, Under the Skin, and Firestarter. Both 11 and Firestarter's Charlie are young girls with telekinetic powers involved with a secret government agency. That film also stars a young Drew Barrymore, like in E.T. 11 doesn't quite explode heads in the scanner's fashion, but she uses telekinesis to squeeze the heads of government agents until blood starts coming out of their eyes. Elle's nosebleed, suggesting her powers cause her harm, is also similar to Scanners, Firestarter, Chronicle, The Fifth Element, and Heroes. The world of Stranger Things takes after David Lynch's Twin Peaks, with its wholesome small-town Americana surface and dark supernatural undercurrents. The uncertain ending, with Will looking in the mirror, parallels the final scene in Twin Peaks, Season 2. Stranger Things has a lot in common with beloved sci-fi series Twilight Zone, which had been running since 1959, but it also is particularly like the third segment of Twilight Zone, the movie, in which a young kid with magical powers is welcomed into a regular family. A flashback shows Hopper reading Anne of Green Gables to his sick daughter.
Well, I don't know, said Matthew. It just makes me feel glad to be alive. It's such an interesting world.
The book is about an orphan girl joyfully experiencing belonging to an adopted family, a story that sounds like Eleven's. Eleven is also partially inspired by the anime character Elfenlied, whose story is like a violent version of E.T. Both Elfen and Elle are given numbers instead of names at a government institute led by an evil father type who carries out tests on the girls' mental abilities. Both girls escape and befriend a boy. When Jonathan takes a picture of Nancy and Barb, he accidentally takes a picture of the Demigorgon. This may be an homage to Blow Up, in which a fashion photographer discovers that he's photographed a murderer in a park. Jonathan's pictures of Nancy through the window also recall the voyeuristic movie Body Double, which features using a telescope to peer at a woman and seeing a murder. Stranger Things even contains a few similarities to more recent pop culture. Through mixing up these iconic films, novels, characters, and tropes, the Duffer brothers speak to our nostalgia for a past time while creating a modern story that feels fresh for any generation. The technique of mashing up familiar visuals and stories allows Stranger Things to capture deeper truths of being a kid or a parent in any era.
Sorry. Spasm.
It's okay, Ollie. It's just a loud noise.
Nice.